Lesson 24, Day 1, 3-4, interpreting graphs on types of transformation. A transformation is a change in size or position of an object or a given graph. In this case, in 3 here, it's going to be some nonlinear graphs. Translation. A translation is a type of transformation. It's simply a slide of the figure where each point moves the same direction and same distance. A reflection is a type of transformation involving flipping a figure over a line. In this case, the given line is normally an X or a Y axis. It's just a mirror image that is formed. 3 other terms here, max, min. Max is simply the highest point on the graph. Min would be the lowest point on the graph. The zeros of a function is the value of the independent variable that makes a dependent variable 0. Basically, what you need to remember is the zeros of a function is where your graph crosses or intersects the x-axis. It is an x-intercept on the graph. So here in example 1, you're given a graph with absolute value, and the absolute value creates that V-shaped graph. Well, in this case, we have a negative, so it's going to invert that graph and form that V upside down. So negative absolute value, x plus 1 plus 3. This graph does have a max value. The highest point on that graph is this point here, which is reaching up to 3. So the max of the graph is 3. The min, the lowest point of the graph, actually, it doesn't have one. The reason why is this graph goes on forever and continues on, and it'll never have a minimum. So the minimum here is going to be none. Estimating the zeros of the graph. Again, it's an estimate. The estimate's where the graph crosses the x-axis. So it crosses my x-axis here and there, and it looks like we have -4 and 2 would be my zeros. The increase of the graph would be along this green line here. This is showing the increase, and I like to go ahead and write an inequality show that increase. So it's the values that you put in for x here. So -1, and this is eventually where that increase stops. So when you have an x value, it's all of these x values to the left of -1. When this is going to show the increase. So when your values are less than -1, and it's your x values, this is your x-axis, these are all those values, and they're to the left of -1. So all those values that are less than -1 will be on the increase of the graph. The decrease of the graph. Okay, obviously it's going to go from this point. So it's going to go from -1, and this decrease is going to continue on in this direction forever. So when your values are greater than -1, it's going to land on the decrease. So it's all these x values to the right of -1 are going to be on the decrease of the graph. So you're writing it as inequality. Here's that breaking point right here. To the left is on the increase. So all your x values less than -1 is the increase, and all the values to the right of -1 or greater than -1 show that decrease. Max and min here for this graph. Again, this graph goes on forever in both directions. So it's not going to have a max. It's not going to have a min. So there is no max or min to this graph. Estimate the zeros. Again, it's an estimate, so an approximation. The zeros are where it crosses the x-axis. So I look up here, this is slightly below -4. So I'm going to say something like -3.8. Again, here's where it crosses that axis, which would be -2. And this one is slightly below 1. So I'm going to say this is -0.9. Those are the x-intercepts. Those are estimating the zeros from the graph. Now on to writing that increase and decrease here of the graph, which is usually the biggest struggle. Okay, so here's what we want to look at. I like to go ahead and mark off where I have my increases and decreases and where they change. So on this part of the graph is obviously going to show an increase, and it increases to this point. And then it will decrease down to that point, and then it would rebound and increase off of that. So there's 2 increases that I have and 1 decrease. The first increase regarding my x values, okay, my x values come down to, looks like -3 is that x value. So to be on the increase, it's all the values to the left of -3. Those values left of -3 would be less than -3. So when your x value is less than -3, it's going to be on the increase. Then you have a decrease. Now the decrease here is going to show a range. It's going to be from -3 to this point, which is slightly below 0. I'm going to say is -0.2. So from -3, x values are greater than, okay, because they're to the right of -3. These values are to the right of -3. But they are less than -0.2 because they are to the left of -0.2. So the values for the decreased show a range of values. Any value from -3 for x to -0.2 are going to show that decrease. From this -0.2 value right here, it rebounds on the increase. So we go, your x values are going to be to the right of -0.2. So your x values are greater than -0.2, and they will show the increase of that value. This will conclude lesson 24, day 1.